I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to cross a line I couldn't uncross. If you'd told me a year ago that I would betray my husband, the man who stood beside me through my worst days, I would have laughed in your face. I would have sworn on everything I hold dear that it could never happen. But here I am, telling you the story of the night everything changed. My name's Lauren Mitchell. I'm 38, and for most of my adult life, I thought I had it all figured out. I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside Portland, Oregon. We have a little white 2-story house with a swing in the front yard, a Labrador named Max, and 2 kids who still believe their parents are perfect. My husband, Daniel, is the kind of man people admire: steady, responsible, a provider. He's never once given me a reason to doubt him. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being a couple. We became co-parents, roommates, logistics partners in a life that looked picture-perfect on the outside but felt hollow on the inside. Conversations revolved around bills, school drop-offs, and who was cooking dinner. Touch became rare. Passion faded into routine, and I started to feel invisible in my own marriage. That's when Ethan Cole walked into my life. He was a consultant brought in to work with my marketing firm. Tall, charming, with that casual confidence that draws people in without them even realizing it. His smile was quick, easy, and just a little crooked. He made eye contact that felt like he was looking straight through the noise in your head and into something deeper. At first, it was harmless. A joke exchanged during a coffee break, a shared Uber back from a client meeting. I didn't think much of it, until the night we were both working late on a pitch. The office was almost dark except for the glow of our screens. It was raining outside, that slow, steady Portland drizzle, and for some reason, the quiet felt heavier than usual. We ordered takeout, opened a bottle of wine someone had left in the break room fridge, and laughed about how our jobs had turned us into caffeine-fueled insomniacs. One moment I was telling him about the first time I met Daniel, and the next, Ethan was looking at me in a way no one had looked at me in years. And then, he kissed me. It wasn't a polite, testing kiss. It was sure, warm, and completely unplanned. I should have pulled away. I should have thought of Daniel, of my kids, of the life we'd built. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in so long. Wanted, seen, alive. I told myself it was a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't over. I came home late that night, later than usual. Daniel and the kids were already asleep. The house was dark, the only sound the steady tick of the wall clock. I stood at the bedroom door for a long time, watching him sleep, his face suddenly so unfamiliar. I wanted to believe I still loved him, that this was just a temporary lapse in judgment. But my hands still remembered the exact feel of touching Ethan. The next day, I tried to avoid Ethan. I sent emails instead of walking over to his desk. I took a different staircase, but the more I tried to run, the more I felt pulled toward him. And then, a message lit up my phone screen. "We need to talk. Cafe at the end of the street. 7 p.m. tonight." I should have deleted it, pretended I never saw it, but I didn't. I showed up at the cafe early. Ethan was in the corner, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled, as if he'd just wrestled with the wind outside. He looked at me like he'd been waiting for this moment all day. We talked. No, we unloaded everything. I told him about the cold marriage, about how I'd slowly vanished in my husband's eyes. He told me about living in a dying marriage and how he walked away before losing himself completely. "Lauren," he said, his voice low, "you deserve more than this. You deserve to feel alive every single day." That sentence echoed in my head all night. When we left the cafe, Ethan lightly touched my hand. That simple touch burned away whatever was left of my reason. The following week was a blur of texts, late-night calls, and excuses to meet. A new project that required close collaboration. A meeting scheduled after hours. And then, the first time I stepped into his apartment, it was on the 10th floor, overlooking the river shimmering under the city lights. I'd told myself I'd only be there briefly, to talk about work. But everything shifted the moment the door clicked shut. There was no more safe distance. No more pretending. He pulled me into his arms, and this time I didn't resist. I didn't hesitate. It happened fast, feverish, as if we'd both been waiting far too long. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding, unsure if it was fear or excitement. Maybe both. When it was over, I sat there wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the lights reflecting on the water. I knew with absolute clarity, from this moment on, there was no going back. What I didn't know was that the price for this would come sooner than I ever imagined. The days after that night felt like living in two different worlds. By day, I was Lauren, the wife, the mother, the dependable coworker, smiling at neighbors, packing lunches, answering work emails. By night, I was someone else entirely, someone who felt alive again, who laughed easily, who couldn't wait for the next stolen moment with Ethan. But living in two worlds comes with a cost, and the cracks started to show sooner than I expected. One evening, Daniel walked into the kitchen while I was texting Ethan. I quickly locked my phone, but not fast enough. His eyes caught that flicker of guilt on my face. "Who was that?" he asked, voice casual, but his eyes were sharp. "Just work," I replied, forcing a smile. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. The next day at the office, Ethan was distant. He barely looked at me, and when he did, there was something heavy in his expression. Finally, during a late meeting, he leaned closer and whispered, "We need to be careful. People are starting to notice." That should have been my warning to stop. But instead, it made everything feel more dangerous, more thrilling, like we were walking a tightrope over an abyss, and I couldn't get enough of it. Then came the night that changed everything. Ethan and I had booked a small motel an hour outside the city. We thought it would be safer, no chance of running into someone we knew. I remember the cold wind, the flickering neon sign, the smell of cheap coffee in the lobby. We were laughing when we walked into the room. We didn't hear the footsteps at first. Not until there was a knock on the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Ethan froze. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Are you expecting someone?" I whispered. He shook his head. When he opened the door, my heart stopped. Daniel. He stood there, eyes scanning the room, taking in the sight of me, hair messy, jacket half off, standing far too close to Ethan. The silence between the three of us felt suffocating. "I knew it," Daniel said quietly. His voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was calm, cold, final. He didn't yell. He didn't demand an explanation. He just looked at me for a long time, as if memorizing the moment, and then turned and walked away. I wanted to run after him, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but my legs wouldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, watching the door close behind him. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just crossed a line. I had burned the bridge completely. Daniel vanished from my life the very next day. No text, no call, not even a single note scribbled on a piece of paper. The house felt hauntingly empty. Cold meals sat untouched. The chair beside me at the dinner table left bare. His familiar jacket was no longer hanging by the door. Even his scent, the one I used to take for granted, was gone. leaving behind an invisible but suffocating void. Ethan still texted me at first. Little check-ins like, "Are you okay?" and "How's everything?" But with time, his messages got shorter. Fewer. Until they stopped altogether. I couldn't blame him. He didn't want to be tangled in this mess. Sleepless nights became my normal. I'd lie in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying that moment when Daniel stood in the motel doorway. That look in his eyes kept looping in my mind, like a life sentence I'd have to serve forever. One night, I tried calling him. The number still worked, but he never picked up. All I got was the cold, automated voice. "The number you have dialed is not answering." I left a message, then another, and another. But the only answer I received was silence. Friends started noticing something was wrong. They asked, "Where's Daniel?" And, "Are you two okay?" I'd force a weak smile, make up some excuse. But deep down, I knew the rumors had already started to spread. Then one day, I found a brown envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written on it, in Daniel's familiar handwriting. Inside was the divorce paper. No letter, no explanation. I held that paper, my hands trembling. It felt like being punched in the chest so hard I couldn't breathe. I knew this day would come, but it still hurt more than I'd ever imagined. Signing that paper meant admitting everything was over, that I had lost the man who once loved me with all his heart, and all because of a reckless impulse, one I mistook for love. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, a bottle of wine open for hours, my glass empty, and then full again. Outside the window, snow began to fall. Each white flake drifted slowly, almost taunting me, as if to remind me that the world keeps moving, even while I'm stuck, frozen in the worst mistake of my life. Winter bled into spring, but inside me, nothing changed. The divorce was finalized quietly. No courtroom drama, no last-minute apologies, just a signature, a stamp, and the sound of a door closing forever. I thought I'd feel relief once it was official, that maybe the pain would dull. Instead, it grew sharper, cutting into me in moments I least expected, like when I walked past the cafe where Daniel and I used to have Sunday breakfast. Or when I heard a man laugh in a way that sounded almost like his. Those moments were tiny knives, slicing open wounds I thought had started to heal. Ethan never came back into my life, not even as a friend. I guess we both knew there was no safe way to go backward. Whatever we had was built on betrayal, and no amount of wishing could turn it into something pure. One night, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun sink behind the trees. It was quiet, too quiet, and for the first time, I let myself really think about the woman I'd become. I had been a wife who felt unseen, a woman who wanted to feel wanted. But in chasing that feeling, I destroyed the one person who had truly loved me without conditions. The truth is, I don't hate Ethan. I don't even hate myself entirely. But I do hate the choices I made. They weren't born from love. They were born from selfishness, from wanting something thrilling instead of something real. Sometimes, I wonder if Daniel's doing better now. If he found someone who listens to his stories, laughs at his bad jokes, and sits beside him without looking over her shoulder. I hope he did. He deserves that. As for me, my life is quieter now. I keep to myself. The phone doesn't ring much, and I've learned to cook for one. I still wake up some nights, thinking I hear his footsteps in the hallway. But it's always just the wind. If you're listening to this and you think you'd never make a mistake like mine, I hope you're right. But if you ever find yourself on that edge, craving something you think will fill the emptiness, step back. Because sometimes the thing you think you're missing isn't out there. It's already in your hands. Until you let it slip away. And once it's gone, you don't get it back.